So I would like to welcome you as an aspiring writer to this enormously important and timeless human tradition where you will be in a chain of people stretching back through the ages of shamans, magicians, above all writers who have done so much to actually shape the development of the human story and of human history, that you can become part of that marvelous tradition and play your own part, however small, however large, in this marvelous enterprise of expanding the things that humans can do, can say, can accomplish, and more importantly, the number of ways in which they can talk about that stuff, the number of things that they can say, and the number of ways in which they can say it. All of my commercial successes were never planned as such. They were all remote outsiders that people liked. They liked them because they were well written, not because they were catching some current trend. Nobody can advise about trends and the vagaries of public opinion. It is best, in my experience, to simply be a good writer. The imagination is endless. There is more in the human imagination, potentially, than there is in the whole physical universe, because the imagination contains the whole physical universe and a lot of things from universes that we have never seen and will never see. So, despite the importance of imagination, it is probably also worth remembering that unless that is imagination that is having the will applied to it, imagination is a treacherous sucking bog that you can waste your entire life in, thinking about how great it's going to be when you write your novel, when you win the lottery, when you hook up with the object of your affections. And none of these things need ever happen, because you will be too busy enjoying the dream of them happening to ever take steps to bring them about in the real physical world. That is when imagination is dangerous. It's like quicksand, and it can neutralize your entire life if you let it. This is why it is immensely important to train the will upon the imagination. Then you will be able to bring your idle dreams and fancies down into a material form. When you are dealing with characters, it is advisable to always listen to your characters, to allow them their integrity, to allow them to have their way in terms of the narrative. If there's something that that character seems to really want to do, then probably let them do it. Yeah, always listen to your characters, always allow them their complete integrity, and basically, no matter how horribly the narrative will call for you to treat them, then allow them that integrity. Treat them as if they are your friends, albeit friends that regrettably you sometimes have to kill. you should always remember that plot is not the story. The plot is not the structure. It's just the plot. It's what gets you from one end of the story to the other, but it is not the most important thing in the story. For example, most stories can be reduced to a simple plot that makes them a nonsense. George Orwell's Animal Farm, the plot of it, which is some talking animals take over a farm, is not what the story is about. And I apologise for anyone who hasn't read it yet and for whom that might be a massive spoiler. How do we do progressive writing? How do we progress? And as usual, it's by considered techniques. One of the things that will almost certainly lead to progressive writing is the idea of literary difficulty. Now, this is an idea which I only heard about relatively recently and then found that I'd actually been practicing it for most of my career. On my first novel, Voice of the Fire, I made, for some reason, the first chapter is in an impenetrable, made-up Neolithic language. And it's also probably the longest chapter, so most of the book's readers would have been turned back in droves. I always wondered why I'd done that. But yes, it is literary difficulty, the idea of which is that by making something about your writing slightly more difficult for the audience to understand, you are going to alienate a certain percentage of your audience. However, the ones that remain will be forced to engage with the work on a much deeper level, and so they will actually enjoy it more. And I think that this is a very important point about art in general, that I do not believe that human beings are actually bred to respond to being spoon-fed their entertainment, to being spoon-fed their ideas and information. I think that the art that I have best responded to myself is the art that has made me do some of the work. Writing is not a single subject, and neither is storytelling. These are things that are actually a collision of about 30 different things in a horrifying pile-up. And one of the things that I hope that this course will do for you is to talk about all of the different facets of writing and how to put them all together. The distinction between being a published or an unpublished writer is not one that I'm particularly concerned with here. My intent is to simply make you a good writer, a better writer, a writer that hopefully will then be able to navigate all of those to's and fro's, those back and forths of public opinion and public taste. If you're a good enough writer, then you can rise over any problems like that. And what I'm saying is that having done this course, that I can't guarantee whether you will be a successful published writer, like, say, Jeffrey Archer, or whether you will remain an unpublished loser like William Blake or Emily Dickinson.